Hello everybody, you're welcome back again to the Reggae Appreciation Society. In 1968, two music-loving teenage brothers growing up in the serene middle-class neighborhood of Mona, just outside Kingston, had made up their minds to start a band. The older brother was a fantastic guitarist, while the younger one was a wizard on the bass. They were extremely talented and just knew that they would make it as musicians. But their biggest hurdle was convincing their strict, prim and proper father that they were about to choose a career playing what was at the time despised in many circles as Rasta music. The pair went on to form the legendary band Inner Circle, which after 55 years of existence is probably the longest running band in reggae history, closely followed by their offshoot Third World, which is 50 years old. Their group, which has been through numerous lineup changes, witnessed the growth as well as evolution of reggae music and have quietly provided rhythms on some of reggae's most classic songs. Though not big on tooting their own horns, Inner Circle are one of the most pivotal and greatest bands of all time. At a point, they were among the hottest and tightest groups on the island, with an insanely talented lineup and a powerfully bright future ahead of them. But when they were on the cusp of major breakout success, a heart-wrenching tragedy literally tore them apart for years, before Jah would orchestrate a series of events that would send them back to the top and usher in an imperious form that still endures till date. Let's take a look at the amazing story of Inner Circle. This story begins with brothers Roger and Ian Lewis at the end of the 1960s. As mentioned earlier, they were gifted instrumentalists and had big dreams of making it big in music while still students at the prestigious Jamaica College. But there was the challenge of getting their father's blessing and approval. The elder Mr. Lewis was at the time librarian at the University of West Indies. He was the average, no-nonsense, middle-class civil servant dad who, after hearing his son's plans, cursed the idea of his sons doing music, but had no other choice but to support them after he saw that his boys were dead serious. So he decided to invest in his son's ambitions. If they were about to go into music, he might as well start them on a strong foundation, and he invested heavily in quality musical equipment. The brothers recruited their schoolmates at Jamaican College in the persons of Michael Ibo Cooper and William Stewart to serve as keyboardist and drummer. Along with Ian on the bass and Roger on the guitar, Inner Circle was now officially born. They were just high school kids but were incredibly talented, and in no time they grew from playing birthday parties to playing gigs at venues where professional musicians would also jam. One of such places was a nightclub in Kingston called The Tunnel, and at the end of each gig, they had a practice of inviting other musicians in the building to come and jam with them on stage. One regular face at their shows was another student at Jamaica College and also a kid from their neighborhood called Stephen Cat Core. And after seeing what he could do over a couple of weeks, they approached Scat and he would join the band in 1969, followed by a young singer named Bonnie Ruggs and a percussionist named Irvin Carrot Jarrett. Not long after, Bonnie Ruggs moved to the US and was replaced by Milton Prilly Hamilton. Their fame would spread quickly and they were called upon to be a backing band on a 1970 record titled Why Can't I Touch You by a reggae quartet, The Chosen Few. They were quickly establishing a strong reputation as one of Jamaica's premier backing bands and were often employed at Dynamic Sound Studios to provide rhythms for various artists. And one of such singers was the then unknown singer from Kent Village called Eric Donaldson, and they would come up with the instrumentals for the song Cherry O Baby, which would win top prize at the Jamaican Song Festival contest and also catapulted Donaldson to superstar status. They were noticed by Bob Marley and were also invited to provide backing instrumentals for the classic track Stir It Up of the Catch a Fire album, even though they weren't credited for their role. They were primarily a cover band, doing their own versions of top 40 chart songs. It was bringing them success as they saw it, but it would lead to the band splitting almost in half. Stephen Cat Core in 1973 had grown restless with the band's constant remakes of existing music and wanted to start making his own original material and made a decision to leave the band. He was followed out by keyboardist Michael Ibo Cooper, singer Milton Prilly Hamilton, drummer Willie Stewart, and percussionist Erwin Jarrett, and they would go on to form the band Third World in the same year. It was a heavy blow to Inner Circle, but they would replace their ex-members with equally gifted personnel like keyboardist Harvey Tauter and drummer Calvin McKenzie. But they were about to become a super band by adding to their ranks one of Jamaica's most talented singers and iconic figures in a very unexpected way. A then upcoming but but amazingly gifted vocalist called Jacob Miller had just parted ways with a rockers label owned by Augustus Pablo and was looking for a new challenge. Miller had gotten acquainted with the Lewis brothers while singing at a bus stop one day and began to admire Inner Circle and decided that he had to join the group. Miller found out where the band rehearsed every week, and he was one hell of a character. He would show up at the rehearsals, and during breaks he'd shout through the window that Inner Circle needed him and would never become great without the great but unknown Jacob Miller. This kept on for months until the Lewis brothers added him to the group as lead singer. It was the addition of Miller that became the catalyst for a sensational rise in the band's fortunes. They were still mostly a cover band, but that was about to change big time. In 1975, they traveled to San Francisco to serve as backing band to Toots and the Maytals and Dennis Brown. But after the show, they somehow found out that the money they were paid just wasn't enough to get them back home. The promoter suggested that they play a few gigs to raise their ticket money, but first asked them if they had their own original songs. Jacob Miller, without giving a second thought, quickly said a big yes, to the shock of his bandmates. But they somehow managed to string some songs together and put on a great couple of shows. It changed their perspective completely as they finally saw that doing original material was the true path to the big time. When they got back home, they formed their own label, Top Ranking, and soon released songs like Tenement Yard, All Night Till Daylight, and Tired Philic Weed in the Bush. These tracks became huge hits and instant classics. The band's popularity really exploded, and in 1976, they were signed to Capitol Records. They released two classic albums in 1977 titled Reggae Thing and Ready for the World. They were already stars, but their real big break would come when they performed a sensational set at the 1978 One Love Peace concert. Led by the charismatic Jacob Miller, they were among the concert's biggest talking points, alongside Bob Marley and Peter Tosh, and delivered what has gone down as a legendary performance. Miller thrilled the 40,000 strong audience to no end with wild antics like when he grabbed a police inspector's hat and put it on while performing with a gigantic spliff in his hand. Miller would also call up Claudie Massop and Bucky Marshall on stage for a demonstration of the peace pact, as both men were leaders of the rival political gangs which had brought Jamaica to its knees. The band's awesome outing got them noticed firsthand by Chris Blackwell, who signed the band to Island Records soon after the concert, and they released their first album for Island, titled Everything Is Great, in the same year. This album became a smash hit and boasted of singles that became hits in the UK, like Stop Breaking My Heart and New Age Music. The album also climbed into the top 10 in France, and the band ended the year on a high with an appearance in the classic movie Rockers. Their popularity in Jamaica by the end of the 70s was surpassed only by Bob Marley and the Wailers, and the sky seemed to be their limit with ever-growing international success. But tragedy was lurking around the corner and would soon bring their fairy tale run to a sad halt. By March 1980, the band was preparing to travel with Bob Marley and the Wailers as opening acts on the Survival album tour. But on Sunday, the 23rd of March, Jacob Miller had finished rehearsals at Bob Marley's house at 56 Hope Road and headed out for the opening of a new nightclub that Inner Circle had just opened called the Zinc Fence. He left the club and went out to buy some sugarcane, and on his way back, he was killed in a horrible motor accident along with his son at the young age of 27. Miller's passing left his bandmates devastated. The band basically fell apart, unable to continue working. Ian Lewis and Harvey Tauter in particular couldn't cope and moved to Miami, where they built a recording studio just to be far away from the memories of that tragedy. They managed to muster some energy to release an album titled Something Good in 1982 with new lead singer Carlton Coffey, but would do very little else for a while. But in 1985, Roger Lewis would join the guys in Miami, and now fully healed from their loss, they began to rehearse regularly by 1986. After signing with Ras Records in that same year, they released the album titled One Way in 1987 to strong critical acclaim, before going on tour to promote the album. While on the road, they would learn that a track from the album called Bad Boys had become enormously popular. The roaring success of that single caused them to include it in their next album, Identified, released in 1989. But little did the band know that they would become engrafted in popular culture when the song Bad Boys was chosen as the theme song for a reality TV show titled Cops. The show became immensely popular all over the world, and everyone who watched it fell in love with the song. Inner Circle quickly became a global sensation, and the band would leverage on the song's fame by releasing it again in their most successful album, which was released in 1992 and aptly titled Bad to the Bone. Bad Boys was on the album, but it was the song Sweat that would take the band to a whole new level. It became the biggest song of 1993 all over the world, topping the charts in 8 countries including Germany, where it was number 1 for a record-breaking 13 weeks. The album on its own sold 4 million copies and won the Grammy for Best Reggae Album the next year. Inner Circle was now enjoying incredible mainstream success, the type which hadn't been enjoyed by any reggae artist since Bob Marley, and would even escalate to another level when Bad Boys was again used as part of the soundtrack for the 1995 movie Bad Boys, starring Will Smith and Martin Lawrence. The lead singer, Carlton Coffey, left the group by the mid-1990s, so the band replaced him with Chris Bentley, who is still doing his thing with the band until today. The band hasn't released any new albums since 2009's State of the World, but they remain immensely busy, playing at practically every major reggae festival every year. In 2019, Ian and Roger Lewis received national honors in the Order of Distinction from the Jamaican government. Their late friend and colleague, Jacob Miller, also got the award, which was received on his behalf by his son, Taki Miller. The Lewis brothers are now in their early 70s, but are still bringing the heat in sensational, solid, age-defying performances practically everywhere on the globe. 55 years after, they are still going strong, driven by the concept of family and a mission to use music as a universal language to promote love and unity everywhere in the world, making mankind one family and all of us members of the inner circle. So there you have it. Thank you for watching the video today. Please leave a like, subscribe, and until next time, God bless.